Hi, Black Cat Recapped here. Today I am going to explain an animation movie called Soul. The movie starts in a school where Joe Gardner, a music teacher, is instructing a group of kids who don't seem interested in music. However, there is one girl named Connie, who plays the trombone and does a solo, but feels embarrassed about it. Even when Joe talks passionately about how he fell in love with jazz music, the students still don't care. Later, the school principal, Ms. Arroyo, calls Joe out of the class and offers him a full-time job teaching the school band. Although Joe is grateful, he wants to do more with his music career. Joe tells his mother, Libba, who works as a seamstress, about his new job as a full-time music teacher, and she is happy for him. However, she is not as supportive of his dream of becoming a jazz musician, thinking it's a waste of time. Later, Joe receives a call from a former student named Curly, who plays in a band with a famous jazz musician named Dorothea Williams, whom Joe admires. Curly tells Joe that there is a job opening for a piano player, and invites him to join the band. Joe accepts and impresses everyone with his soulful playing, earning a spot for the soundcheck that night. Overjoyed, Joe accidentally falls down a manhole while walking around in excitement. Joe's soul travels down a dark staircase towards a bright light, and other souls inform him that they are going to the great beyond because their time on Earth is over. However, Joe is not ready to accept his death after experiencing the best moment of his life, so he tries to escape down the stairs, but more and more souls block his way. Eventually, he breaks through a wall and falls into a place called the Great Before. Here he meets a counselor named Jerry, who shows him around where the souls go before they are born on Earth. Some souls can jump down a hole to go to their Earth bodies, but Joe is having trouble doing so. Jerry tells him he can avoid going to the great beyond if he becomes a mentor to other souls and helps them earn their Earth pass to gain a life. Meanwhile, a soul counter named Terry notices that something is wrong with the count to the great beyond. Joe goes to a special school for souls to receive a personality before going to Earth. Jerry pairs him with 22, a rebellious soul who's been mentored by famous figures, including Abe Lincoln, Muhammad Ali, Copernicus, Mother Teresa, but doesn't want to live on Earth. Joe pretends to be a famous psychologist, and 22 follows him reluctantly. As they spend time together, 22 shows Joe a way to view his past memories, which leaves him feeling unfulfilled with his life. Joe then becomes determined to get back to his body and make a difference. Together, they decide to find 22's spark to activate her Earth pass, which Joe can use to return to Earth, allowing 22 to skip living on Earth altogether. Joe tries different ways to help 22 find her spark, but nothing seems to work. After learning that 22 might have found her life purpose, she takes Joe to a realm called the Zone, a space between the physical and spiritual world where artists, musicians, and athletes go when they feel inspired. However, 22 only goes there to play pranks on people, like the New York Knicks. While there, they encounter lost souls who were never able to find their purpose and were consumed by negativity. Joe and 22 are eventually found by Moonwind, a man who acts as a soul guide and brings them to Joe's comatose body in the hospital. As Joe prepares to jump back into his body, he accidentally drags 22 down with him, causing them both to fall into the soul hole. Joe regains consciousness to discover that he is no longer in the great beyond, but in the body of a therapy cat named Mr. Mittens. Meanwhile, 22 has taken over Joe's body. Both are bewildered by the situation, but Joe advises 22 to act normally to avoid raising suspicion. Although unhappy to be in a human body, 22 agrees to cooperate with Joe to find a way out. They attempt to locate Moonwind's place of work in Manhattan, but the bustling city overwhelms 22 and she retreats into hiding. She hides until Joe goes to swipe a slice of pizza and give her her first taste of food. 22 decides that she loves pizza, and Joe also swipes her a gyro. They eventually find Moonwind at his job, where he tells them to meet at a specific location at 6:30 later that day for Joe to return to his body. While trying to get home, Joe is horrified when Dorothea and Curly see his body in a hospital gown wandering the streets. They hop in a cab and make it back home before anything else happens. Upon returning to his apartment, Joe receives a call from Curly who tells him that Dorothea was frightened when she saw him and gave the gig to another musician. Despite this setback, Joe believes he still has a chance to redeem himself if he looks presentable and shows up to the gig anyway. However, before he can prepare himself, Connie arrives and informs Joe that she wants to quit the band. Speaking as Joe, 22 talks to Connie on a level that she can understand, and although she seems to encourage Connie to quit, the girl changes her mind after playing a trombone piece that she had been working on. 22 is surprised at having been able to influence someone else. Joe attempts to groom 22's appearance by cutting his own hair, but it goes awry as he accidentally shaves a bald spot down the middle of his head, and his electric razor stops working. He then suggests that 22 go to his local barber, Des. During their visit, they encounter Joe's adversary, Paul, who makes disparaging remarks about Joe. 22, still speaking on Joe's behalf, shares her musings on life and how she has come this far. Her comments impress everyone at the barbershop, and she even manages to get a jab in at Paul when he makes another snide remark. After the haircut, 22 approaches Paul to make amends, but Terry interrupts them. Terry reveals that Joe was the lost soul she was tracking, and while she returns Paul's soul to his body, she still leaves him uneasy by attempting to explain herself. Joe's pants are torn, and since they don't have time to find a tailor, he realizes they have to go to Libba's shop, even though she won't be happy that he's taking a gig. While riding the subway, 22 experiences an angry New Yorker yelling at her. Upon arriving at the shop, Joe learns from Libba's co-workers that she already knows about the job. He and 22 speak with Libba and Joe blurts out that Libba never supported his ambitions. However, after a heartfelt discussion, Libba says she has always supported Joe, even if she thought his dreams were unreachable. She decides to support the gig and gives Joe his father's old suit. Joe and 22 visit Moonwind to return Joe to his body, but 22 has realized that she enjoyed living in a body, even with negative experiences like the subway. She refuses to give up Joe's body and runs away, leading him to chase her into the subway. Terry catches them with a trap and sends them back to the great before. The Jerrys discover that 22's Earth pass is filled because she found her spark, but Joe argues that it doesn't count because it was through his body. This hurts 22, and she throws the pass at him before retreating. Joe asks Jerry B why 22 can have her own body if she found her purpose. Jerry B explains that finding one's spark is not the same as finding one's purpose, but merely a reason for souls to want to live. Joe retrieves the pass and makes it back to his body in time, and Mr. Mittens is reunited with his owner. Despite Dorothea's initial reservations, Joe attends her performance and impresses her with his stunning performance with the band. Although Dorothea offers him the opportunity to join them on tour, Joe realizes that he doesn't feel the way he anticipated. Dorothea leaves him with some words of advice to ponder. When he is returning to his apartment, Joe is filled with remorse over his previous encounter with 22. To soothe himself, he turns on some music and enters the zone, where he reunites with Moonwind. With Moonwind's help, Joe manages to return to the great before, only to discover that 22 has transformed into a monstrous lost soul. Despite Joe's attempts to reach out to her, he becomes trapped in her cloud of negativity. It is only when he finds 22 crying alone, remembering all the times she had been told that she would never find her purpose, that he begins to feel a deep sense of regret for his past actions. In an effort to make amends, Joe takes a leaf that had previously fascinated 22 while she was inhabiting his body, as it represents something small yet meaningful to her. This simple act succeeds in dispelling the darkness that had surrounded her. Joe escorts 22 to the Earth portal and returns her badge, accompanying her as far as he can before they bid farewell. This allows 22 to inhabit her own body at last. Just as Joe prepares to depart for the great beyond, Jerry A intervenes and commends Joe's efforts in inspiring 22. As a result, the Jerrys permit Joe to return to his body, keeping it concealed from Terry by disguising the tally as correct. Joe pledges to seize every moment and make the most of his life.